A lot of people have something difficult happen in their lives and they move on. You're different. You turned it into a mission.
I think for me, whenever I've had any kind of serious challenge in my life or loss, the way that I've been able to work through that has been to just dive in. That's the way that I process.
So we're here in the offices. What are some of these memories?
Oh, this is from our trip to Tanzania recently.
Oh, wow. I look around in this office, Every Mother Counts. Could you have ever imagined where your traumatic birth story would have ended up and how this would have become your purpose?
No, I really would not have known that Every Mother Counts would grow to be able to create so much impact around the world, all from my story, my one story. But that's, I guess, the possibility of all of our stories.
Could you ever have thought that, we all know you as you were a runway model, you're one of the most famous faces in the world, that this would ultimately become your real mission?
I mean, I always hoped that I would do more than my first career and job, but I wasn't really sure what and how that would play itself out. I was very much ready for an opportunity like this. Not that I would have looked for a birth trauma to sort of set me on a different path, but I was preparing for something more and something more meaningful for a very long time.
You were looking for a purpose.
Absolutely.
Tell me about the birth of your daughter, Grace.
I came into this place of my life of wanting to be a mom, of being prepared to be a mom. I'd had a one full career and had gone back to school. So I, in my early 30s, was like, I'm ready for this next challenge in my life, for my next big transition. And so I had lots of choices. I had given some thought to how I wanted to bring a child into the world, and I really wanted an unmedicated birth. So I knew a midwife was the best possibility for me to ensure that outcome. So I found a great midwife, I found a great doula, I found a birthing center here in New York City that was wonderful, and there was an OB that backed the midwives in that delivery. And so I felt really prepared. My husband, Eddie, was very much supporting my choices and was right on board with me, and we were really ready. We were 2 weeks late, or she was 2 weeks late. And so if we'd gone any longer, we would have had to deliver in the regular maternity ward. So just before that deadline, I was able to go to the birth center, and I was in labor for about 12 hours. It was intense, but what I kind of imagined. And then she was born, and we didn't know that we were having a girl, so that was exciting and wonderful. And everything was perfect. Just the energy was really upbeat and wonderful. And then after a little while, as the nurses were kind of cleaning up and scurrying around doing different things, the sort of tone in the room started to shift. And I wasn't delivering my placenta, which I didn't realize was such a big deal. And so they would kind of come and check on me. And then at a certain point, they called the backing OB, and he came in, and just the energy in the room shifted pretty quickly.
So because you had planned this non-medicated, you're in a birthing center, there's a midwife, a doula. When the OBGYN walks in, he's there for emergencies.
He's there for emergencies, and yet they didn't move me, which was so good for me, because to be separated from my baby would have been, I think, scary and traumatic in and of itself. They managed as a team the postpartum complication that I was enduring, and he ultimately had to extract the placenta. I didn't need to be moved to an operating room or anything like that. It was all done in the birth center, but it was incredibly painful because of my wish to have an unmedicated birth, and there wasn't enough time to do anything else. It was unsettling, it was confusing, it was painful. And then, I still kind of wondered, why did this happen? And how did this happen so quickly? And as prepared as I was surprised that what happened was even a possibility at the point that it was. So I went back to see my midwife and had a lot of questions, and learned that I'd lost a few liters of blood actually in the whole process, and that there really wasn't anything that could have been done in advance. There's no test or scan that would have revealed that I had a retained placenta to have prepared us better. But I did feel very grateful that the team that I had in place worked so well together, and I felt safe. But I did think immediately about everyone else that goes through this experience, all of the people in the world who don't have a supportive partner, that don't have a midwife, a doula, a nurse, an OB backing them. There are a lot of people that go through this experience in life by themselves, with one person who may not have the tools or the education to be able to understand the complication, let alone to be able to manage it. And so I felt grateful, and I felt like I needed to help to pay forward for the next mom that needed that care.
Something about that moment, you go from the ecstasy of having your first baby to the trauma of having to go through a medical procedure that was painful and you did not plan. And that moment gave you a mission.
It really did. I mean, it definitely took a little time. I didn't know, in the moments after or the weeks after even, but I started to talk to other women after I came home, and more women were sharing their stories with me. There were all these stories that I hadn't heard until after I became a mom. And that's too late, I think. I think it's too late to know the possibilities. I think it's also just too late because, if we had the information and we had the awareness, I think we would be better prepared. We'd have a better plan in place that if plan A doesn't happen, there's a plan B, a plan C, and so forth.
You started to do your homework. You started researching maternal health. And what did you find?
I learned that around the world, hundreds of thousands of girls and women die every year from pregnancy and childbirth-related complications. And that shocked me. That seems like something that happens in a different time.
It does. It feels like some old-fashioned Victorian book you might read.
Exactly.
You started researching, you started looking into it. The first thing you did a documentary about some of these issues. How did you start?
It was really actually when I was pregnant with my son, Finn, a couple of years later, where I was able to travel down to Central America, where my mom is from. And that's where I really had that aha moment. I was maybe about 6 months pregnant at the time. And I remember visiting a small community in a rural setting. There was no access to clean water. There was no paved roads. There were no vehicles. I hadn't seen a hospital in miles. That's when I kind of realized if I'd had that same complication that I'd had with Grace, that there's no way I would have gotten to the care that I needed in time to save my life. And so I came back from that experience. I applied to Columbia's Mailman School of Public Health here in New York, and I started working towards, really understanding global health, public health as it pertained to maternal health, and really in educating myself and being around folks who were really committed to maternal health and ensuring safer outcomes for moms in all kinds of communities is really where the pieces started to come together. And that's what led me to make this documentary film, No Woman, No Cry, which came out in 2010.
While I got the care I needed, too many women don't.
It's been like one piece at a time. It's like you sort of, scratch the surface and then you learn something. And then once you know that information, you can't unlearn it. And so each step on this journey has really led me to the next step. And I guess that's why looking back 12 years later, I'm like, I can't even believe that we're here or that we've been able to do as much as we have. I think if I'd looked that far forward, I might not have been able to do what we've done. I might have been overwhelmed by just the need and just the scope of the problem globally. But looking at it, thinking about my own situation, thinking about the people in my circle, thinking about my community at large, this country, it just allowed me to continue to look up and try to do more. A lot of the same challenges exist here as do in Haiti or in Bangladesh or in India, which I know is surprising for a lot of people. But ultimately, distance is a huge barrier. If women live far away from care and don't have transportation, don't have childcare, it's sort of you can put yourself in the shoes of another woman and travel through a country or a rural part of this country and imagine what would it take if this happened or that happened, and how would I get there, and who would be able to care for me, or who would be able to care for my child. And just being able to put my feet in the shoes of other women has really allowed me to, I think, make a bigger impact for larger populations.
You've raised tens of millions of dollars for this cause. How do you help?
We've really worked hard to build relationships with community-based organizations around the world. And through those community-based organizations, we trust them as the sort of front lines of what the needs are in those communities. And we want to make sure that every mother or birthing person has access to high-quality care, the highest attainable possible quality of care, and respectful care, most importantly. And then policy. We really work closely with policymakers at the local level, the state level, the national and global level to really create change that can make a difference in our institutions. If the world is sort of in agreement that every life is of equal value, that maternal health matters, that motherhood is something that should be valued and revered in our culture, then we're going to do more to ensure a positive experience and a safe experience, a respectful experience for all. If people are treated with respect and dignity, they will want to seek care throughout their pregnancies or in a timely way. If people are afraid to seek care, they'll wait until they need it, and sometimes they might not need it until it's too late. The other big piece is the storytelling. Since No Woman, No Cry, we've continued to really tell many more stories. I mean, there are countless stories to be told. They not only model initiatives and like sort of approaches to being the solution to this issue at every level, they also really kind of put the voices and faces to this issue. And I think people start to see themselves in a way that might otherwise feel that's a problem from over there, or that's a problem with this community or that community. So really to try to personalize it and humanize this issue, because it is the most human experience that one can have.
Are there stories that have stuck with you over the years, people you've met?
Gosh, there's so many stories, but yes, every time I come back from any kind of field visit, I have a new story. But then there's also those just very first stories that always stick with me. I mean, just coming back from Tanzania, I think of Janet, who I met in a small health dispensary in rural Arusha, outside of Arusha in northern Tanzania. And she was pregnant with her third child when I met her. She had walked nearly 5 miles to get to the dispensary. And then her pregnancy wasn't progressing, so the staff, which was very limited, they sent her home. And, just watching her leave, I knew that she wasn't going to come back, whether she needed it or not. And so we actually ended up giving her a ride back to her village. This was just how we learned how far away she lived. And in the end, she needed a ride to the hospital, and we were able to provide a ride to her, which was more than an hour away. And she was able to give birth to her third child safely, but through a C-section. So she needed that. If she hadn't had access to that C-section, her baby would have died, she would have died, and the family would have lost a mother.
It's stunning because it can be something as simple as a ride. The need can be that simple.
It really can.
You wrote a book called Arrival Stories, which has a lot of other women's stories of birth, stories of pregnancy. Amy Schumer shared her story. Why did you feel like that was something that needed to be told?
Amy had reached out to me after she had her son, and she'd had such a difficult pregnancy, which she was very, very transparent about all the way through. So she reached out after she had Gene, and she said, I really think that what's needed out there is a birth anthology. Like, we don't tell our stories. Wouldn't it be so much more helpful? Couldn't we do that? And I was like, I feel the same way, but let's do it. It really was coming from such a natural place and such a place of really wanting to make people feel not alone in this journey. There are funny stories in this book. There are some really sad stories in this book. And while there is really a spectrum of stories that are shared, there's so many more. And so we really want to get people talking and sharing and just being that circle of support that I think we all wish for ourselves, for everyone. And I've seen that in other women and other families who've had experiences around this topic and issue, like being able to share your story, being able to connect with others. It does create this kind of community of support and this way forward that might not have been possible had we tried to do it ourselves or put it in and bury it. And I mean, trauma does manifest and it does weigh us down. If not immediately, over time it does. And so I just really encourage people, no matter what it is that you've gone through, to really dig in, try to learn as much as you can about whatever it is, to, talk, to seek help, to seek guidance, to share. It's really the most powerful way, I think, to get through.
Well, all that pain is not for no purpose. Go through it and then to have nothing come of it, it's just pain for no purpose at all. But here's this situation where if you're going to have to go through this difficult thing, you know?
Yeah, use it to the greater good. Absolutely, absolutely. The full life experience really is all things, right? It's not all good, it's not all bad, hopefully. And so, you know, to share those experiences and to be thinking about our experiences as a way forward, as a way to share this human connection, I think it's sort of very life affirming, I would say.
Serena Williams tells a story about her birthing experience, and she really had to advocate for herself.
She did. I mean, her story is so powerful, and it's one that I think will never lose its power. You know, here we have such an incredibly strong and resilient and like physically powerful force, and someone who knows her body. She knew that something was wrong after she gave birth, and she was demanding the care. She was knowing exactly what she needed, and maybe had she not been Serena Williams, she wouldn't have been listened to in the way that she had, and she saved her own life. And I think that's a really powerful thing. We shouldn't, in that state, be expected to have that voice because it's hard, but we really want that self-advocacy. It's so important in order to have the advocacy of the person who is by your side to say, no, my wife needs you. You have to listen to her, or my friend needs you to listen to her. It's so critical.
We've all been so moved by the images of newborn babies in Ukraine, moms who are pregnant in the middle of a war zone. Have you been able to reach organizations there and spread your mission in Ukraine?
Yeah, I mean, the images that have come out of this conflict have been just devastating. And, you know, in these instances, we've tried to build a real network of organizations around the world who are focused on maternity care in particular. But in this instance, you know, we reached out to another organization called Global Response Management, who really works in emergency settings. And when we reached out to them, of course, they were already on the ground, already doing an assessment in the Ukraine, and were able to help us navigate how best to support them.
You have a presence internationally, but you also have a strong presence here in the U.S.
There's so much need in the United States. Not only are we one of only 2 industrialized countries with the rising maternal mortality rate, we have really seen the numbers escalating and really impacting women of color most significantly. And so really our investments here have been at the local level. In California, in Texas, in Louisiana, in Florida, in New York, in New Jersey, in Massachusetts, in Minnesota. The thing that's sort of the common piece is that these are organizations that are led by incredible women of color who are midwives, they're doulas, they're birth justice activists, they are powerhouses, and they are really modeling for young doulas, young midwives, you know, just how to be. I mean, the modeling of this kind of leadership is so essential. And then as well, when we have emergencies that happen, whether they're here in the United States with climate change related issues, hurricanes, crazy storms that happened in Texas last year, we are able to sort of jump in and support those needs, which come back down to those basic, you know, housing, food insecurity, shelter. And so, you know, because of those community-based organizations, we really are able to sort of wrap our arms around their needs and the community's needs that they're serving.
You've raised so much awareness about maternal health and pregnancy. It's something that for a long time people didn't talk about. If you had a difficult birth or a difficult pregnancy, I don't know if there was a stigma, but people didn't talk about it.
I think there's a sense that, you know, because in the culture, I mean, we really see like happy pregnant people, if we see pregnant people at all. If we even see a head attached to a pregnant body, it's such a strange thing. It's like we all expect that this is something that happens. We know it happens. We all came into the world the same way. And yet it's not like we want to talk about how it happened or how we got in that state. I think there's a lot of just like mystery around it, which I don't think is helpful. I think maybe it sort of speaks to the way that birth has become so medicalized. There's not this sense of, you know, that this is something that just that happens that could be difficult, that could be painful, and there's so much in our culture that says like we don't want pain, we want to turn that part off. It can be sometimes difficult, it can sometimes be painful, but to have, you know, a sense of the spectrum of the experience, I think is the most useful for people.
And what a resource, that well of wisdom, women sharing their stories with other women.
I I think so. Passing forward, like I think about my daughter. When I started this work, I would say, you know, by the time that she's of an age where she wants to become a mother or is thinking about becoming a mother, I hope this is a very rare event. I want it to be better for the next mom, our daughters, our sisters, our neighbors, everyone.
You are an avid marathoner. I've even run with you.
I love you, Christy, but this might be the end of the road for me.
I know you really
Just
have.
a few steps, not very far at all. How does your running match up with your mission?
Yeah, distance is a big barrier for women to access care. And so the idea of running 26.2 miles was like, oh, this is a distance that a woman will have to walk or have to be transported. And my mantra became every mile, every mother. You know, it's really like that distance piece is so rooted in what we're trying to do. As well, I feel like it's such a metaphor for childbirth. I didn't realize to the extent of, but my midwife had tried to assess my endurance, my strength, my determination, my ability to manage pain. And I wouldn't have known until after childbirth, like, okay, now I know what she's talking about. And then when I ran my first marathon, I was like, okay, I really get it. You know, you need a team, you need to train, you need to be prepared, you need to have a coach. You know, you need so many of the same things that you need to be able to complete a distance race. And so it still feels like it really resonates. It's the way we can bring in men and the rest of the family into this experience. And we've really built a strong community through the running initiatives that we lead.
Motherhood is a marathon.
It really is. The biggest endurance sport of all.
Here's a picture that has Grace in it as well.
Oh, she's so cute. There she is. Was this the first time she'd come on one of your travels?
She's come actually on a few travels. She's come with me to Guatemala a few times.
And your daughter, Grace, recently ran the marathon with you. That's a full circle moment, too.
It really is. She ran her first marathon in November, a couple of weeks after she turned 18. We started together, and I was able to greet her at the finish line. I will say her old mother is much faster. Yes. But then we ran again together in Tanzania. She ran the half, and I ran my 10th full marathon. And, you know, she just had her own experience, and she has her own motivation for it, but she's so connected to the mission of this organization. She takes all credit for everything that we do.
Well, it did start with her.
I mean, 18 years, that's a life. To think of, like, carrying her as a tiny person and then to be basically the same size as her and side by side with her, woman to woman, it's really powerful.
But you're faster.
But I'm faster.
What does inspiration mean to you?
Inspiration is sort of like that turning a light on, you know? It's like sometimes you don't even know yourself what you're capable of until someone turns that light on for you.
And listening to that as well.
And listening to that, because it can be really an internal experience, absolutely.
And what inspires you now?
Women, other women, stories, connection. I'm so inspired by how honest and how brave women are and resilient.
What do you say to people who call you inspiring?
Thank you. I think we all can inspire each other, and I love to hear that I have inspired anyone.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals, and so much more with the Today app. Download it now.